Yo, man, what's going on, y'all boys, man? Today we have a pretty crazy video, man. This is about a story that happened supposedly in Katy, Texas, of this mother who did the most unthinkable thing a mother, a parent, whoever would do to their children. You know, and I haven't had a chance to watch this. I read on this a little bit, but I will just let y'all know that this was like one of the most craziest women in the entire world. So let's figure out and see what's going on. I read a little bit on this, but I haven't had a chance to see like every single thing. When I tell y'all this girl is wild, let's get into it.
I promise you, please forgive me. I'm sorry. Please don't shoot. Please don't point that gun at us. I promise you whatever you want. I promise.
Wow.
These are Taylor and Madison Sheets. In 2016, they were shot and killed by their mother, Christy. But everyone who knew Christy thought she was a loving mom. She would gush over her girls on social media and describe herself as a proud mother of two. So, what happened on that day?
There's a lady with a gun.
There's a lady with a gun? Where?
Yes. It's coming out of the house right now.
What was Christy's horrific murder motive? And were there any red flags around her behavior before? Could her husband have prevented the double murder? We'll explore these questions and many more in today's video. But before we go on, I must warn you, this video contains real-time 911 calls of the murder, which may be pretty disturbing. Today's story begins in the small town of Katy, just outside Houston, Texas. In 2016, Katy was the home to a family of four: Christy and Jason Sheets, and their two daughters, Taylor and Madison. Taylor Sheets was born in 1994. She was the more artsy of the sisters, but she also had a motherly instinct and loved teaching young children. After graduating with honors from Lone Star College in Cypress, Texas, Taylor began working as a full-time teacher at Kids Are Kids, a child daycare center and pre-K school in Katy. Kids Are Kids director Cindy Graves remembers her as a super passionate teacher. She was a wonderful person, a wonderful teacher. She was always around children. But Taylor also wanted to become a professional artist. During the 6 months that she worked at Kids Are Kids, she decorated the whole facility with her drawings. Needless to say, the kids loved it too. And by 2016, she'd also begun illustrating scrapbooks and photo albums. Taylor's best friend, Chris Mascoro, said she was very determined to combine her two passions towards a successful career. She had a plan and she knew exactly what she was doing. Another one of Taylor's plans was to get married to the love of her life and high school sweetheart, Juan Lugo. The two had been together for 5 years, and at the end of June 2016, they were due to have their wedding. But just days before, Taylor would be killed. Her sister Madison was 5 years younger. She really looked up to Taylor, and even though she was still a teenager, she was also really good around children. So how come these two young girls were so motherly and caring? Was Christy a model mom, imbuing them with wisdom and empathy, or did they become mother figures because they lacked such a figure at home? Christy was born in Decatur, Alabama. Her loved ones remembered her as a happy kid who did well in school and always followed her dreams. 15 minutes away.
I just knew they were going to say Atlanta, Decatur, Atlanta. Y'all know everything I react to be happening in Atlanta, man.
And empathy, or did they become mother figures because they lacked such a figure at home? Christy was born in Decatur, Alabama. Her loved ones remembered her as a happy kid who did well in school and always followed her dreams. 15 minutes away from Christy's home was Jason Sheets. Christy and Jason were still virtually kids when they met and fell in love. They went to high school together, became best friends, then lovers, then husband and wife. The people who knew them as teens remembered there was no one else for Christy or Jason. And when it was time to start a family, the young couple moved to Katy, Texas. This way, they would find work and a bigger house. Christy worked as a stylist, executive assistant, and receptionist. Jason was an IT consultant for an oil and gas company. In Texas, they made new friends and neighbors, and when people looked at the four of them, they saw a happy family. Christy, Jason, and the daughters were always doing fun stuff together, and their laughter could be heard from the neighboring houses. However, as the girls grew up, the neighbors started hearing more shouting and crying than laughter. Christy and Jason were always fighting over how they should raise their children. Christy was always accusing Jason of being too laid back with their daughters.
Wow.
She was afraid that they wouldn't do much in life without clear direction and a pair of disciplined caregivers. However, for Jason, Christy's parenting style was too controlling. He wanted his girls to develop naturally and follow their own dreams, not their mother's. Sadly, as the years passed, both only hung more tightly to their own idea. They just couldn't find common ground. Despite the turmoil in the relationship, Christy seemed to love her daughters deeply. She was always on Facebook, posting pictures of her and her daughters and bragging about her perfect family life. In September 2015, she wrote, "Happy Daughter's Day to my two amazing, sweet, kind, beautiful, intelligent girls. I love and treasure you both more than you could ever possibly know." No life is without hardship, though. Christy was projecting her best side online, and there were a lot of things about her that her Facebook friends didn't know. By the early 2010s, Christy had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety. She had a big problem with regulating her emotions. In 2012, Christy's grandfather died, and he'd been her role model and the person she'd relied on for support of any kind. And 2 months after he died, Christy's mother also succumbed to an illness.
Ooh.
This sent Christy down a rabbit hole of depression, fits of anger, and alcoholism. Indeed, Christy had turned to alcohol to escape her overwhelming feelings. Urged by her loved ones, Christy sought the help of various doctors and mental health facilities, but she didn't feel like they were helping. Instead, she stayed home, drank, and took out her anger on her helpless, desperate husband.
Yep, and children.
Between January 2012 and June 2016, the police were called to the Sheets family home 14 times. 3 of those times, Jason had called 911 after Christy had tried taking her own life. Jason was desperate to help his wife through her ever-worsening mood swings. But every time he would speak to officers about this, Christy would say her husband doesn't understand her pain and is not there enough for her.
Boy,
again, they had irreconcilable points of view. In June 2016, Jason decided to end the marriage.
Yep.
He was tired of being the voice of reason over and over again, and he didn't want his daughters to live with this kind of stress anymore. Every few months, the family would call the police for fear Christy would take her own life. Jason felt like she wasn't really interested in her family's help. She continued to drink, making her prescribed antidepressants redundant, and she shunned doctors or their pleas to get help. So Jason just wanted to shelter his daughters from all of that. But a few weeks after their breakup, Christy would kill her children in front of her husband.
Wow.
On June 24th, 2016, Jason was celebrating his 45th birthday. Well, he was supposed to anyway. That day, the emergency services in Katy received a gut-wrenching call.
I promise you, please forgive me, I'm sorry. Please don't shoot me. Please don't point that gun at us. I promise you whatever you want.
As the dispatcher was trying to figure out what was happening, they heard a very cold voice. The dispatcher witnessed the whole scene as it was happening.
These 911 phone calls are some of the most disturbing that you can imagine.
Very.
The screaming, the desperation, the sheer horror in the voices.
The dispatcher immediately sent the police to the Sheath's home. Every second was of the essence. Clearly, Christy had a gun pointed at her family, and her husband and daughters were begging her to spare their lives.
Forgive me, I'm sorry. Please don't shoot me. Please. I'm sorry. No.
Hello?
Don't shoot my family. Please, I'm sorry. Please, I want to do anything.
Hello?
Please don't point that you whatever you want. I will.
When the phone went off, the dispatcher feared for the worst. But before the police and paramedics could even reach the house, another 911 call came in. It was the family's neighbor.
And there's a lady with a gun.
There's a lady with a gun? Where?
Yes. It's coming out of the house right now. Two
Okay.
people shot outside.
Okay.
People shot outside.
Okay, where's the lady with the gun?
It's on the street right now.
The neighbor had actually seen something much more disturbing seconds before. He was looking out the window when Taylor and Madison crawled out of the house, leaving a trail of blood behind them. Both of them had been shot in the back, and now they were crawling on the street. The dispatcher kept the neighbor on the line until the police arrived, asking him to describe Christy and the girls.
She wearing a purple dress. She's on the...
Is it long, short? What is she? Where are the patients?
They're in the street. They're in the middle of the street.
Both Taylor and Madison were still alive at this point, but heartbreakingly, their mother knew this and couldn't leave it that way.
Wow.
It looks like both of them are alive. Both of the shot person, there's two ladies. They're both alive, but
Okay.
you know, she tried to shot again. She's trying to shoot again on the top of her, but apparently she don't have no more. Apparently she don't have any more bullets.
Christy was now standing on top of Taylor, pointing the gun at her as she was trying to plead for her life. She could barely talk. All she could do was cry. This didn't impress her mom, though. She watched her daughter, tried to pull the trigger, noticed she had no bullets left, and so she went inside the house.
What?
A few seconds later, she came back out with her gun pointed at her daughter.
She coming back again with. Apparently she has bullets now on her.
Okay, stay on the line.
Oh, she shot her again. She shot her
She
again.
shot her again?
Yes, from the back. She was trying to run.
If Christy had been a minute late to reload her gun, Taylor would have made it out alive. She was just standing up and attempting to run when her mother shot her again. Then she made sure Madison was dead too. The neighbor watched as the girls died, and then he watched his own family for a minute. Just as his head turned away, he heard more bullets. When he looked out the window again, Christy was lying in the middle of the street. Christy had been shot by a police officer after refusing to drop her weapon.
And she's laying down on the floor now.
The female that was shooting is laying down?
Yes.
Did she shoot herself?
I don't know. I just see her down on the floor now, but I don't know what happened.
This was her plan all along: kill her daughters, manipulate the police into killing herself, and leave her husband to despair over this for the rest of his life.
That is evil.
The police found Jason crying and yelling at the end of the cul-de-sac on their street. Christy had managed, in the blink of an eye, to destroy her family, leaving Jason in pieces and elude justice. Now the police had to work back to figure out her horrifying murder motive. First, the detectives had an ample record of police being called to the family home, and the reason was always the same. Christy was threatening to take her life or throwing frightening tantrums at her husband and daughters. Then, when criminologist Casey Jordan analyzed the 911 calls, she noticed a crucial clue.
She knows exactly what she's doing.
Yep.
She's methodically doing it. She had a plan, she carried it out, and probably did that knowing that she wasn't going to survive.
Of course.
So this was a premeditated murder. It was also telling that this had happened on Jason's birthday. Was this his birthday present from Christy? As they spoke to Jason, the detectives learned that their relationship was especially strained as of June 2016.
That's sad.
After all, Jason had just announced his intention to break up with Christy. What was also clear was that Christy had plenty of time to shoot her husband if she wanted to.
Right.
Christy had ample time and opportunity to shoot and kill Mr. Sheets in the home, but she chose not to. Mr. Sheets stated Christy knew how much he loved Taylor and Madison and how much they loved him. By killing his children, Mr. Sheets will have to live the rest of his life with this horrible memory.
Man, on his birthday.
Clearly, Christy's horrible motive was to punish Jason.
Motive was the big unanswered question in this case. Now it appears that Christy Sheets was motivated by anger and revenge, and that the person she most wanted to hurt was the one survivor of that shooting spree, her husband Jason, who had asked her for a divorce.
But why? Were Madison and Taylor simply tools in her great act of revenge?
Gotta be.
As it turns out, there were other layers to the family turmoil. That morning, Christy started arguing with Taylor about her wedding to Juan. Jason was very upset about this. Not only was it his birthday, but his daughter was as happy as she could be. In just 3 days, she was supposed to marry the love of her life.
What?
Now, Christy was threatening to ground Taylor and block her from seeing Juan. First of all, who grounds a 22-year-old?
Mr. Sheets did not agree with Christy and told her that it was inappropriate to ground their 22-year-old daughter and prevent her from seeing her fiancé.
Second of all, what was her problem? Jason was really upset that day. He told Christy, "This will be the last birthday party you're going to ruin." Christy didn't respond anything at first. She just stormed out of the room. Jason was almost relieved. He thought perhaps that was the end of their argument, at least that day. But Christy was just in another room, planning to murder her children. A few hours later, Christy called a family meeting and invited everyone into the living room. This was not the first time Christy was doing it. The family was thus expecting a long sit-down in which Christy would say she felt misunderstood. Once again, she would make it all about her, ignoring her husband's birthday or her daughter's upcoming wedding, except this time, it would be much worse than that. Christy took out her .38 caliber revolver, which she had hidden behind the sofa cushion. The gun was the only valuable she'd inherited from her grandpa. Knowing her history with mental health and alcoholism, Jason had pled with her for years to keep it locked. Christy had always defended her choice to have it on hand. When this happened, Jason and the girls didn't even realize what was happening. They were convinced Christy would attempt to take her life again, and when they begged her not to do it, Christy told them they didn't understand the situation. Now, it was all about punishing them, not herself.
Facts.
Jason managed to call 911 as Christy was shooting at the girls. Madison was struck in the neck as she was running out of the house. Taylor was hit in the head while she was running after Madison. Miraculously, Taylor survived and was even close to running away when her mother shot her again on the street. Taylor still had a weak pulse when the paramedics airlifted her to the closest hospital, but within the hour, she was pronounced dead. Her little sister was dead at the scene. As Christy was shooting her eldest daughter for the 3rd time in the head, the police arrived and ordered Christy to drop the weapon. Instead of dropping her gun, Christy started walking toward the cop. She wanted to end her life then and there, and her wish came true. In an outrageous twist, Christy was a passionate guns rights activist. On Facebook, next to her daughter's loving posts, Christy would regularly insult President Obama, criticize Democrats, and comment that she needs her gun to protect her family. It would be horribly tragic if my ability to protect myself or my family were to be taken away. But that's exactly what Democrats are determined to do by banning semi-automatic handguns. But that's exactly what you did, isn't it? Christy doesn't make the best example for her case. The police uncovered another tragic twist as they spoke to Jason. After he broke up with Christy, he actually spent some time apart. He was ready to take his daughters and move somewhere else while their divorce was a work in progress. However, just a few days before the murder, Jason thought he'd give his relationship with Christy another go. One last chance before he officially filed for divorce. Perhaps Taylor and Madison's horrific deaths could have been prevented if they really left home for good. Jason's love and hope for the family eventually brought his daughter's deaths. But their deaths are not on him, they are on Christy. And it's made even sadder when you look at what her daughters would write about her. In 2013, Taylor wrote on Facebook about her mother. She is intelligent, fun, strong, encouraging, amazing, and a blessing. Taylor and Madison worked so hard to keep their volatile mother happy. Perhaps their motherly instincts and mature, caring personalities stemmed exactly from that. When you have an overbearing, moody parent, you become their parent. It's not fair, but it's a fast track to emotional maturity.
It's true.
Imagine loving your mother and giving your all to see her happy, only to have her pull a gun on you on your dad's birthday. It's heartbreaking to know what Jason will have to live with for the rest of his life. It's cases like these, cases without a trial, a sentence, or justice of any sort, that leave the biggest wounds. Everything happens in the blink of an eye, and the survivors have to work hard to make sense of the events on their own. Christy punished her husband in the worst way imaginable, but Christy was never punished herself. Did she ever love her daughters? Were her many Facebook posts genuine?
Was a pawn.
How could Christy see her daughters as mere pawns in her plot to punish her husband? Thanks for watching, you guys. What do you...
I'm not gonna lie, this stuff was wild. I wasn't expecting to hear anything like that. Like, it just seemed like it was stuff on top of stuff on top. Like, what? This girl, like, I don't know, this needs to be in like a television series. Like, Netflix be making all these movies, the shows, they definitely need to touch on this type of subject or whatever. The Chrissy, this whole situation that happened in Katy, Texas, like, this is wild. Like, I done heard plenty of stories of you know, parents, you know, doing this type of stuff. I heard stuff on the news, but I don't think I ever heard something this strategic. She wanted her husband to feel like he lost everything. So she took everything away from him. Not only did she take everything away from him, on his birthday, on the birthday, you lost everything. You lost every single, that is sad. That is scary to just even think about, bro. If I'm being 100%, like, that is just like me just thinking of the thought of just how everything was 3 days before her daughter was finna get married. Like, she just seemed like she was very miserable. She lost everything as well. So she's like, I'm losing everything. I'm finna take everything. Like, what? All because he wanted to leave? Man, just make sure y'all know the person that y'all sleeping next to. I don't think I need to say too much because the proof was in the pudding, man. They did a good thing dissecting this entire story. I just wasn't expecting nothing like that. Like, this is some movie stuff. You come out into the street and then finish your kids off and then walk towards the cops on some set it off. Like, you feel like, what? This is just wild, man. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts, please, down below on what y'all think on this.